The rising energy usage of blockchains has recently been facing increasing public scrutiny. Most recently, Tesla's CEO Elon Musk announced that the company would suspend vehicle purchases using Bitcoin and only resume once mining shifts to more sustainable energy sources, while Tesla studies other, more efficient cryptocurrencies. Simon Dixon, the CEO of banktothefuture.com, is joining me now from the Isle of Man for more on this. Simon Dixon, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. It's been a pretty up and down and up again couple of weeks for Bitcoin. The dollar price of Bitcoin has been erratic, to say the least, over the past couple of months. What have been the trigger points, in your opinion?
Well, from my perspective, having been involved with it for over a decade now, it's pretty much Bitcoin as usual. But people like to find reasons for it. And the reasons is that we tend to have lots of news-driven announcements. So every year we get new adoption cycles where new people come along, and they may not be used to the volatility that we experience in this asset class. So recently there was announcements from China restating that Bitcoin exchanges are not allowed to operate and certain companies are not allowed to operate in China. And then more recently, Elon Musk and Tesla brought to the front a debate around the environmental friendliness of the process for creating Bitcoins, which is known as Bitcoin mining, which consumes a lot of electricity. So people like to speculate on the short-term value based upon these adoption cycles that we've been experiencing for over the last decade.
Absolutely, you're right with the headlines. There was one headline I read from one professor saying that Bitcoin alone consumes as much electricity as a medium-sized European country, probably more than the Isle of Man where you are. The FT also recently labelled it as a dirty currency. How much of a worry is this going to be for investors?
The reality is that Bitcoin rewards people for being the most economically efficient. So while electricity is the mechanism for securing the Bitcoin blockchain, which is the way that people verify all the transactions and how it exists without needing a central bank or a government, the reality is that you get rewarded for the more efficient you are. So Bitcoin uses a lot of wasted electricity, and now it's brought to the front a conversation around a race for innovation around the most environmentally and economically efficient ways of mining Bitcoin. So it's actually the opposite. The second thing to think about is its comparison with the traditional financial system. So people think of Bitcoin as an alternative to central banking. And central banking is a vastly inefficient and inferior financial system, mainly because the excessive money printing and the fact that banks create all the money as debt and the effect that all the indebtedness has on society, as well as the fact that most wars are funded through this central banking mechanism.
Thanks for mentioning the central bankers, because that goes pretty nicely into my next question. Some say crypto, bit of a sideshow to the real financial market, quote unquote. Do you think this is too dismissive? I think I know what your answer is going to be. And do you think there will be a time where central bankers, including our very own Andrew Baily, will finally take cryptocurrency seriously?
Most already do, but the headline is that if you admit that Bitcoin's something to be interested in, it's kind of like saying, you're giving a green light to everybody, and the job of a central banker is to protect their currency in order to meet some of their goals. So you wouldn't expect a large country or a country that has a dominant currency like the United States or Europe or the Great British Pound to be saying anything friendly about Bitcoin. In reality, you've got countries like El Salvador that now are accepting it and saying that it is legal tender, and a wave of countries. So Isle of Man, where I am, in 2014 was the first government to try and make Bitcoin legal tender and support the industry. Really, Bitcoin is David meets Goliath. So I believe and forecast that we're going to have massive currency wars, which we already have, but they're going to become more prevalent in the future, where currencies are being used as a mechanism for power and suppressing countries, and Bitcoin's their play there. So the companies that have adopted it sooner, yes, they take higher risks, But all the financial people that I know, and I've been involved when I was the first investment banker to speak at a Bitcoin conference over a decade ago, Every year, more and more of them are into Bitcoin, and what they say at the front and what they actually do is what's important. So I believe that central banks right now are accumulating Bitcoin. They're not just announcing it. And that is the definition of a world reserve currency, is that central banks are using it as some of their reserve assets. Countries are already allocating some of their electricity to mining Bitcoin, and each and every year we get new adoption cycles. Banks and central banks have tried to dismiss Bitcoin for a long time, but now you've got crypto-friendly banks, you've got exchanges that are becoming larger than some of the largest banks in the world, and they're entering into banking and just applying for their own banking licenses. So this industry isn't going anywhere. And the longer a country dismisses it, the more likely they are to be. A quick case study is Bulgaria. Many years back, they confiscated a bunch of Bitcoins from a criminal organization. If you take the value of the Bitcoins that they confiscated, they're actually worth more than the entire national debt of Bulgaria. So although those corrupt Bitcoins disappeared into the corrupt officials as well, it shows that countries can actually wipe out their national debts just by holding Bitcoin and doing what individuals have been doing over the last 10 years.
Goodness me, I'm getting very excited speaking to you, Simon. I think Channels Business Global have stumbled upon a cryptocurrency scholar. I'm just trying to calculate in my head how much Bitcoin you're probably sitting on. Before I let you go, Simon, again, I think I know what this answer is going to be, but explain it for the simpletons of us. Is Bitcoin the future of money? If it is, how is it going to transition into becoming? Give us a kind of a sci-fi conclusion, if you can.
Yeah, so to answer that question, it's about the difference between Bitcoin and banking is that with a bank, when you deposit your money with the bank becomes the legal owner of your money. The second thing is they spend it as they choose, and they create it every time they issue a loan. Bitcoin is the opposite. So Bitcoin allows you to own your own money, to spend your own money peer-to-peer, and its supply is completely fixed, so there's no political interference in the money creation process. Now, I don't think that Bitcoin becomes just the only form of money. The reason for that is because Bitcoin historically has gone up in value for 12 years now, and so therefore people are reluctant to spend it. With their traditional money at a bank, they're very they're happy to spend it because it tends to go down in value over time. So I think in the future you have central bank digital currencies, which are just digital versions of currencies that we have now. We have the removal of cash and coin, and we have Bitcoin, which is an alternative, sucking up savings and rewarding people that save, and traditional money will still be a way and a mechanism for spending. So I do think you have both. But I do think Bitcoin is the future of people's savings, an exit from the traditional financial system, and something that becomes the demand just goes up and up over time for money you can own, money you can spend, and money whose supply is fixed.
Wonderful. Really great analysis from you, Simon Dixon, CEO and co-founder of Bank to the Future. I know our viewers in Nigeria will be very interested in what you have to say, because you may or may not know, but Nigeria and Bitcoin have a bit of a love-hate relationship at the moment. Simon, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.